So it's May 2026, almost June, and the landscape of HIPAA compliance has drastically shifted. The days of addressable security loopholes are closing. Mandatory encryption is here, and strict penetration testing rules are on the horizon. If you think your clinic or SaaS startup is too small to worry about these massive HIPAA updates, then think again. We're breaking down what's in effect, what's pending, and how to protect your patient data without breaking the bank. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the HIPAA Insider Show. Before we dive in today, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and it really helps us bring the best experts in the healthcare data security industry to you and ensure you never miss an update that could save your business from hefty fines. Joining me today is our resident expert and CEO of HIPAA Vault, Gil Vidals. Gil, we're exactly 5 going on 6 months into 2026, and there's been a whirlwind of regulatory action from OCR to HHS. How are you doing first, and then how are our clients handling the pressure?
Well, I'm doing great, Adam. Thanks for having me. To answer your question, there's definitely some anxiety out there. Healthcare is consistently the most expensive industry for data breaches, averaging almost $10 million per breach recently. So because of this, regulators, as you can imagine, are dropping the hammer. Yeah. But the good news is, with the right cloud technology and the right tools, any business from a solo practice to, say, a mid-sized vendor can meet the standards. It's all about breaking it down into bite-sized pieces, and actionable steps, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why we're here. Remember, folks, while we strive to bring you the most up-to-date educational insights, we're not your lawyers. Very important to point out. So always consult with legal counsel or dedicated compliance specialists for specific legal advice and other advice. Gil, let's start with a high-level overview. What is already in effect now in May 2026 and what's currently pending?
Okay, so let's look at the timeline that you put together there on the screen. Back in February of 2026, the deadline hit for updating what's called the Notices, Privacy Practices, or NPP, specifically surrounding reproductive health privacy and substance use disorder records. That's officially in effect now. And what's pending, and this is where the IT departments are beginning to sweat a little bit, is the new security rule proposals that dropped around mid-April.
Yeah.
These rules propose stripping away flexible security measures, mandating annual penetration testing, and requiring biannual vulnerability scanning. While they're pending finalization, the organizations really should be starting to get their budgets in line, figuring out the implementation plan in order to be ready for this.
Yeah, so let's talk about this a little bit, if you like, a philosophical level. So the biggest changes in these updates, the shift from addressable to required. And for our listeners who, might be new to the HIPAA jargon, could you kind of talk a little bit about what addressable means and why OCR is getting rid of it?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, and just to give everyone some background information. It makes a lot more sense if you know the background. So under the old HIPAA security rule, certain technical safeguards like encryption or multi-factor authentication were categorized as addressable. Okay. Now, that did not mean optional. What it did mean is that an organization could evaluate if this particular control was reasonable for their environment. And if it wasn't, they could document why and implement an equivalent alternative. But in reality, what happened was, Adam, that many organizations use this simply as a loophole. they could just say, well, we didn't implement it. You know, we looked into it though, but we decided it wasn't for our environment. And they could say encryption, say, was too expensive or too complex and skip it. So regulators have seen enough ransomware attacks to know that equivalent alternatives often fail. So the proposed updates completely remove that flexibility. You can't excuse it anymore. You have to implement it.
Okay, so the loophole is dead. And if a rule says required, you just have to do it, right? So how does this specifically impact encryption?
Well, in a big way. According to recent breakdowns from compliance groups like Security, the 2026 updates make encryption a hard requirement for all electronic protected health information, or EPHI. So here's what you have to do. Data at rest. All ePHI on servers, laptops, USBs, cloud storage must be encrypted using AES 256 or equivalent standard. At rest, to remind the audience, means that when there's no power to the device. So USB that you can hold in your hand is not plugged in anywhere, that's at rest. Your laptop that's not plugged into power and is turned off, that is at rest. And then data in transit. Any data moving across the network must be encrypted using TLS 1.2 or higher. That's the little lock that you see in your browser. You pay attention next to the web URL, the web address, you see a little lock. If you click on it, it tells you this is encrypted, and it tells you what kind of encryption. So if you have a legacy system that doesn't support AES 256 encryption, you can't just write a memo saying, you know, here's why we're not doing it. You have to upgrade and or replace the system.
Well, yeah, well, that's a massive wake-up call for example, dental offices using old servers in closets on premise, right? Or startups trying to build their own unencrypted databases. So let's pivot to the second major IT change of this 2026 rule update, penetration testing. I know in the past, HIPAA required quote unquote risk analysis or risk analyses, but it was sometimes vague on pen testing. So what are the new 2026 requirements telling us on pen testing?
Yeah, the updated security rule proposal gets very specific here. It mandates that covered entities and business associates perform penetration testing of their systems at least annually. And if you deem that your internal risk is higher than average, then you should do it more frequently.
Who can perform the test? Is it just like, can we have in-house IT guy run a script and call it a day?
Unfortunately, well, I guess it depends on your perspective. Fortunately, unfortunately, the rule states that no, you have to have a qualified person that knows the industry best practices and is qualified to do a pen test. Okay, so it's a technical action that's done. So in addition to the annual pen test, the pending rule also requires automated vulnerability scanning at least every 6 months. So you have to scan your external, internal, and cloud environments, treat the results seriously, and actually go and fix the vulnerabilities you find. So these can't just be reports that you tuck into your filing cabinet. You actually have to take the action to remediate what you find in those reports.
Yeah, and I can hear small business listeners panicking right now. Annual third-party pen testing, AES 256 encryption, biannual vulnerability scanning, MFA mandatory. Gil, how does a small like 50 up to 50 person healthcare tech company afford this? Does it mean that only the megacorps can survive in healthcare?
I don't think so, and this is exactly why the overarching theme of our podcast is that really the enterprise grade security is still available to everyone through the MSPs, through the cloud providers. You don't need a $500,000 internal security team. Instead, you can leverage secure cloud providers like HIPAA Vault and managed security service providers that bundle the services that you need. For example, a good secure hosting provider is going to handle that AE 256 encryption at the server level and manage the TLS certificates. Those are some of the things that you can get with a cloud provider. They should sign the BAA with you as well, so they can share the compliance responsibility with the experts. So this does take some navigating, and I do understand why this raises the anxiety levels, because there are many companies that would quote, a ginormous number. So you have to be careful. You have to navigate through this.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the beauty of the shared responsibility model, right? You outsource the heavy lifting to companies that know what they're doing, whose entire existence is built around securing the EPHI. So that's great. Well, Gil, as we wrap up, I think one final slide we wanted to share is what are the 3 top actionable steps our audience should take this week to prepare for pending finalizations?
Yeah, that's one of the themes in this show, is that we like to give practical advice, not just talk at a high level. So practically, what you can do as a business manager, as a medical practitioner that may not have the technical skills, conduct an asset inventory. That you can do. After all, you signed the bills to pay for everything. So find out which servers you have, what mobile devices that you have. Get it written down in a spreadsheet. Find out what you have. That's the first step. Get the inventory going. And work with you. If you have an IT consultant, work with him on it. And then look at those devices, find out what they do. And then if they have, do they have encryption? Do they have EPHI data? If yes, then make sure that they have the encryption that you need. And then finally, budget for a pen test. Pen tests are notoriously expensive, but I think the prices will come down as the demand goes up. There'll be more companies offering it. So you do have to do the pen test. So look for a good source, a company that will do it at a reasonable price. And the April 2026 proposals indicate this will be strictly enforced soon. So I think you need to start there with those 3 items.
Yeah. Well, brilliant advice as always, Gil. And remember, it's just to add, to document everything. If it isn't documented in the eyes of the auditors, it didn't happen. Gil, thanks always for translating these complex regulations into plain English for us.
Yeah, my pleasure, Adam. And stay secure, everybody out there.
Absolutely. Well, that's it for this week's episode of the HIPAA Insider Show. If you found this breakdown of the 2026 HIPAA updates helpful, please leave us a comment below. Tell us your biggest compliance headache and hit the subscribe button. For secure cloud hosting solutions that make meeting these new required standards easy, check out HIPAAvault.com. Links in the description, and we'll see you next time.